To review, this chapter studies two methods of calculating GDP: expenditure approach and income approach. The expenditure approach adds the four sources of expenditure: consumption expenditure, investment, government expenditure on goods and services, and net exports of goods and services. Expenditure on used goods and financial assets are not in GDP. The income approach adds two categories of income: wage income plus interest, rent, and profit income. This sum is net domestic product at factor cost. To get to GDP, subsidies are subtracted and indirect taxes and depreciation is added. Statistical discrepancy is added or subtracted to the income approach GDP, so that GDP using the income approach equals GDP using the expenditure approach. Disposable personal income is income received by households minus personal income taxes paid. Real GDP is the value of final goods and services produced in a given year, expressed in the price of a base year. Nominal GDP is the value of final goods and services produced in a given year using prices of that year. Practice problem. The table 1 shows some of the items in the US national income and product accounts in 2010. Use table 1 to work problem 1 to 3. Use the expenditure approach to calculate US GDP in 2010. Expenditure approach: GDP at market prices. GDP was $14.5 trillion. That is, GDP is equal to C plus I plus G plus an X. In 2010, US GDP is equal to $10.2 plus $1.7 plus $3.1 minus $0.5 trillion equals $14.5 trillion. What was US GDP as measured by the income approach in 2010? By how much did gross domestic product and net domestic product differ in 2010? GDP as measured by the income approach is $14.5 trillion. With statistical discrepancy 0, GDP expenditure approach equals GDP income approach. GDP minus NDP is equal to depreciation, which was $1.9 trillion. Calculate US GNP and US national income in 2010. GNP is equal to GDP plus net factor income from abroad. $14.5 plus 0.2 is $14.7 trillion. So the national income, or NI, is equal to GNP minus depreciation. So $14.7 trillion minus 1.9 trillion equals $12.8 trillion. Table 2 shows some data for an economy. If the base year is 2013, calculate the economy's nominal GDP and real GDP in 2014. Nominal GDP in 2014 equals 160 apples times $1 plus 220 oranges times $2 is equal to $600. Real GDP in 2014 at 2013 prices equals 160 apples times $0.50 per apple plus 220 oranges times $0.25 per orange is equal to $135. True or false? The expenditure approach measures GDP by using data on consumption expenditure, investment, government expenditure on goods and services, and net exports of goods and services. These are true and false, which you can see by yourself. And multiple choice.